Hi class, I hope all of you are doing well. This week I'm going to be talking to you, or in this lecture, I should say, I'm going to be talking to you about essay coherence. There'll be another one that follows this, but I'm going to talk to you about essay coherence on two different levels. In this one, I'm going to talk to you about coherence uh, amongst the sentences in a single paragraph, and in the other lecture on this topic, I'm going to talk to you about coherence between paragraphs. So moving from one paragraph to the next. Now, having said that, when I think of the term coherence and how to really make your essay glue together well and hold together like a good unit of text, if you will, I think of transitions. And as I hope to show in this lecture and then the one that will follow, when we talk about transitions, even though I'm going to talk about them being amongst the sentences in a paragraph or from one paragraph to the next, for the most part, the transition is brought about, really, brought into being, if you will, by one word, or in some cases a few words, two or three, but it's really the use of a few pivotal words sprinkled here and there that, when done well, can really help your essay sort of be glued together as a text. Okay? So, just as a little disclaimer, most of the info that I'm going to give you in this lecture originally came from this website. I tried to look for it a few months ago, but was not able to find this website, so I don't know if it's been taken down, if it has a different web address, but this website, originally had, when I looked at it some years ago, had a wealth of information on transition. So if you can find that website or the same one published by that university, by all means, have a look at it. It was absolutely terrific. But even if it doesn't exist, I still want to give that university the proper acknowledgement that that's where I originally got some of my material from. Okay, now in this lecture and the next, when I speak to you about transitions, I want you to think of them as being part of one of three categories. Now, there are some transitions that can cross over into multiple categories, but at least initially, I want you to think of them as being part of one of three categories: transitions that unite ideas, transitions that divide ideas, and transitions that conclude or move to conclude the text or move the reader toward a resolution of some sort. So, the other reason why these labels and categories are the same is because as I grade your essays, and having expecting that at one point in another you will watch this lecture and the other and absorb at least part of this info. I want you to be aware that when I grade your essays and mark up your papers, I'll expect you to watch these lectures and to have some kind of working understanding, if you will, of what I mean by these terms: uniting transition, dividing transition, and concluding. And when I, in fact, grade your essays, I will frequently say things like add a uniting transition here or add a dividing transition here. And based on your understanding of, those terms, I'll expect you to then kind of run with it and insert the correct word or phrase as the case might be. So, you know, if nothing else, I want you to develop an understanding of transitions as occurring in these three groups. So here are some examples of transitions that unite ideas. For the most part, as I suggested, these words all do the same thing. They unite ideas. They bring ideas together. They show how ideas might be similar to one another. But if you closely look at this list, there is a little bit of separation between some of these words, and rather than playing some kind of Jeopardy style waiting game and playing some nifty tense music moment or tense moment music in the background and waiting for you to guess on the other end of cyberspace where that boundary lies between these words, I'll go ahead and tell you. In my mind, there is somewhat two subcategories there. When you use a transition like also or and or another or furthermore, you're uniting ideas to be sure, but even though you're uniting ideas, you're not necessarily forcing yourself to cover your subject matter in a specific sort of rigidly defined order. However, when you use a term like first, second, third, or go down the line, even though I didn't overtly carry it beyond that, fourth, fifth, what have you. When you use more specific transition words like those, first, second, third, so on, you're forcing yourself to cover your ideas in a very specific order. There's sort of an upside and a downside to this approach. The upside of using those more detailed transitions is that they are very precise. There's no guesswork involved there. However, the downside, is that they force you to cover your material in a rigidly defined order, and in some writing situations you simply don't need to cover your material that sort of meticulously. So be aware that you can do that sometimes, but for at least for now, I'm gonna leave it up to you, and I think you're all smart enough to figure out when you can use a somewhat more generally uniting transition like moreover, or a more precise one like first, second, or third. So, having said all that, notice that I have some examples here. In the first bullet points, our main subject here is a person named Chris. We learned that Chris is on a basketball team in the first sentence, and then at the start of the second sentence, thanks to the uniting transition in addition, notice it highlighted there, we're also informed that he's on the school's soccer team. Similarly, in the next set of sentences, we learn a couple things about the Texas School for the Deaf. First thing, we learned that it is a good location, and then at the start of the second sentence again, thanks to the uniting transition, moreover, we learned that the school also has a strong academic program, a strong academic record. And notice that the transition, we're bringing together in this second set of examples things that are good about that school, and notice that it's really accomplished through that one word, okay? here we have some words that divide ideas, like although, but, however, so on. And I'm not going to, meticulously go over the list like I did last time because I don't think it is necessary. I don't really see, maybe one of you do and wants to suggest it, but in this list, unlike the first one, I don't really see any subcategories. These are all clearly words that divide ideas without any sort of internal differentiation between them within this category. But having said that, before I go on to the examples, I want to remind you that if at any point in this video I'm going too fast, of course you can pause it and kind of scroll back and, and kind of look it again and kind of double check what the heck did he just say, that sort of thing. Or if after double checking like that you're still not clear on something, feel free to contact me and ask me to go over it again with you individually. I'll be more than happy to do so. That's my job, so, that's not a problem at all, folks. Okay. So here are some examples of dividing transitions at work. Notice that in the first example, the first bullet point, the transition rather than is dividing two ideas within the same sentence. We learn in the first one that he, whoever he is, prefers to attend the play rather than attending the conference, and as someone who's had to attend some conferences and many meetings throughout my professional life, even though I don't know what play he's talking about, it could be a perfectly dreadful play, but nonetheless, I'm guessing it would still be more fun than going to a conference. Those things are just boring as all get out. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling and I need to stop that. So I'm going to be serious now and focus. Okay, in the second bullet point, we learned that three friends go to an amusement park, Busch Gardens, for the day. And then at the start of the second sentence, notice that again, even though we're given a couplet of two sentences, really the dividing transition in spite of is dividing concepts within that last sentence. We learned that in spite of the cold weather, they still enjoyed themselves at the park. And those are two ideas that would typically go against, one another. I can remember a couple times when I was younger, and I'm sure many of us have had the experience of going to Cedar Point or another regional amusement park when it was cold and rainy, and generally makes for a crappy day, but they apparently enjoyed themselves, so I say good for them. Okay, moving on then, words that show conclusion or resolution. The only thing that I want to highlight about these words before I show the examples, first, the expression in conclusions. There are, I want to warn you, and you might know some already, there are some English teachers, some writing teachers who sort of artificially forbid you to use the expression in conclusion in your papers, even when you're in fact starting the conclusion. Even though I understand why some people mandate that, I do not have that kind of prohibition. As long as I don't get the sense that you have used the expressions, these terms unnecessarily earlier in the essay, then I might complain or get a little disgruntled. But the key thing that I wanted to spotlight from my perspective is that you need to be very careful about when you in fact use a concluding transition. You don't want to say something like finally and, suggest to the reader that we're moving toward a conclusion and then still have a bunch of stuff come after that. Now, sometimes in a larger style, like research style essay, you can conclude a specific section and then certainly have more that come after that. But for the shorter papers that we're gonna write in this class, I don't think you really need to worry about that. So just as long as you're reasonably careful about when and where you use these transitions, you don't necessarily need to overthink it. Just as a quick thought, a word like therefore or thus or as a result of, those are other words that could be tossed into that category as well. Okay, so in the last sort of grouping of examples, we learned that first off that a lot of problems were discussed in a meeting, and then notice at the start of the second sentence, finally, pointing the audience toward a resolution. Finally, after a few hours, the people at the meeting were able to prioritize the problems in order to solve them. Um, then in the second couplet of sentences, we're in the first sentence given a laundry list of things that went wrong in a play, and then at the start of that second sentence, notice in conclusion, again moving the reader toward a resolution or conclusion, whatever way you want to think about it. In conclusion, because of all those things that went wrong, the play was a disaster. And believe it or not, folks, that's the end of this lecture, but certainly, as always, if you have questions or concerns, feel free to contact me. I'm here to help. That's what I'm here for. Okay, and as always, feel free to ignore as I back away from this part. And thank you, though, and have a good night, folks. Bye-bye.